A question I often hear from people is, how on earth can you still believe in God? Don't we live in the age of science? And hasn't science utterly disproven God? Hasn't science buried God? Haven't religion and science always been at war with each other? And come on, look at the world we live in. Science has clearly won. Well, the idea that science and religion are at war with one another is, to give it the technical term, a myth. It's known as the conflict thesis, the idea that science and religion have been eternal enemies, and it simply isn't true. Here's an interesting historical fact for you. The founders of modern science, the majority of the folks who actually carved out the modern scientific method were Christians. They were men of deep religious faith, and you can look back to those who did that, people like Bacon and others, and you can go, these were people who had a deep faith in God. And what's interesting, not merely were they men of religious faith, but they often Christians. When you look into what drove them to develop science, it was actually their Christian faith that did so. Why was that? Well, think about this for a moment. To be a scientist, to do science, you have to believe in a world that is ordered and regular rather than a world that is chaotic, a world in which the future looks like the past, in which you might expect there to be laws and a structure to the universe. Well, what might give somebody that idea? You see, we live in the age of science, we take that for granted, but that hasn't always been the way the world has worked. Many civilizations, for many thousands of years, believed that the universe was essentially chaotic. What led science to begin? Well, it was because the founders of science believed in a God who was regular and consistent and ordered, and thus he had created the universe that way. And so, in a sense, Christianity was not the enemy of science. Christianity was where science was birthed and was the cradle from which science sprang. So the conflict hypothesis is a myth. It's also important to recognise that science has limits. It may be one of the best tools that human beings have ever invented, but there are some questions it can't answer. Let me illustrate. Imagine I were to take my friend to perhaps the most famous art gallery in the world, the Louvre in Paris, and we go and see that amazing picture by Leonardo da Vinci, the Mona Lisa, hanging there on the wall. And I turn to my friend and I say, I've always wondered why Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa with that enigmatic smile. And my friend says, well, maybe here's what we can do, Andy. We can drug the security guards. And when they've all fallen asleep, what we'll do is we'll shatter the bulletproof glass that protects the picture. We'll scrape some of the paint off the picture and we'll do a chemical analysis. We'll take a sample of the wood and we can use dendrochronology to work out when the tree that was felled that made the wood panel for the picture. And we can do all this battery of scientific tests. I'm a scientist, and we can answer your question. I would probably look at my friend a little bit bemused and say, my friend, you're clearly not a scientist, you're a lunatic in the Louvre, because all of those scientific tests, helpful as they may be, not one would answer the question I asked. Why did Leonardo paint the Mona Lisa with that enigmatic smile? For that question, we need art history. Science won't help you. In other words, there are some things that science can't answer. It can't answer questions of art history, or economics, or philosophy, or aesthetics, or politics, or religion. Science wasn't designed to do that. And you have to use a tool for the thing it was designed for. A sledgehammer may be great for breaking rocks. If I start using it to try and paint a picture, I'll be in trouble. But one last thought. Why is it we can do science in the first place? We can do science because we are rational, thinking creatures. But the problem is, if we are just atoms and particles, if there is no God, if all that is going on between my ears right now is a chemical reaction fizzing, why is it that I can even think in the first place? Why is it that I'm conscious? Why do I have a mind? Well, the interesting thing is Christianity answers that question too. We are made in the image of a God who is rational. That's why we have minds. That's why science works. Science is not a weapon that demolishes God, but a signpost that points to him.